Hi there. Today I'm going to talk a bit about Spanish. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, as they say. Good afternoon, good morning, or good day. Porque and porque. Apparently this causes some consternation for Spanish learners. So I thought I would give you my perspective on this as a learner of Spanish. And at least I was a learner of Spanish. Now I'm enjoying what I'm able to do in Spanish. Not perfect, of course. The first thing is that in any issue in language, I always say that don't rely too much on the explanations. You can easily Google porque and porque, and you'll find lots of explanations. Explanations can be a little bit how would I put it? You have the feeling when you read the explanation that you're learning something and understanding something, but very often a half hour later you've forgotten what was there. So the explanation kind of gives you a sense, but it's only one small part of starting to master a particular pattern in a language. Simply put, if you hear porque in Spanish can mean why, porque. It can mean because, porque. It can even mean the reason why, you know. And now, in other words, he told me why. So I'm not asking the question, but he told me the reason why. In which case, so those are the three most common, all right? When you hear porque, you're not aware necessarily of the fact that in some cases it has an accent, and in some cases it's written as two words. Of course, when you are reading, you should pay a lot of attention to how that porque is written. And of course, when you go to write in Spanish, if you have to, then you really got to think about how you should write. Now, since we mostly write on computers these days, you can always look it up. And every time you look it up and you read the explanation, you can retain the explanation for long enough to get it right while you're writing, and that'll eventually help you to learn it. But, very simply stated, porque, why? Porque, as the question, porque, is in two words, and the que has an accent on it. Okay, so, porque, why? And the answer is because, porque. All right? And so that's pretty straightforward. So when you're speaking, as long as you realize that why and because is essentially, when you're hearing it, the same word, you're happy. Same when you go to use it. Porque, porque, why, because, same word, no problem. It's only when you are having to write in the language that you have to be a little more careful. And that's why when you read in the language, you should pay attention to which one it is, all right? Now, what helps me in any of these issues is my knowledge of other languages, all right? So, for example, in French, the porque, as in why, is parce que. So it's actually a different word. Whereas, the because, parce que, is a different word. Whereas the porque, as in why, is pourquoi, all right? Except the French have it as one word. But it's an example of how these things can help you. It's like, you know, often with my genders in French, if you say a word like le vocabulaire ends in E, which is often feminine. But if I think of my Spanish, el vocabulario, that helps me remember that le, it's a male vocabulary. It's the same with como and como. In Spanish, if you say a question like, como means how. Como has an accent on the O. But como also means as. Como se dice, as it is, as we say. Okay? So there again in French, you can refer to como as the question is comment in French. Whereas como as in como se dice, como, como me parece, as it seems to me, is like comme, C-O-M-M-E in French. Even the English can help you. Say, if you're looking at the porque, as in a question, for what? Because que can mean what. But if it's the because, it's for that. Because que is also that. So it does make sense. And I find sometimes these cross-language references, English to Spanish, it's an easier way of remembering how these words are used sometimes than the explanation. But everyone has to find their own way of making these things natural. So the explanation, including the explanation that I just gave you, is just a little bit of a nudge. in the direction of getting used to these things. But it's only through lots of listening and reading, lots of paying attention, underlining when you're reading, saving phrases at Link if you're on Link. In other words, forcing your brain to pay attention. And gradually then, these things become a habit. So there shouldn't be any difficulty with porque and porque. Other than, in other words, I find myself in the situation of, well, first of all, I don't pay much attention to it because my needs in Spanish are simply listening and reading. And listening, reading, and speaking. I don't write much in Spanish. So I don't have to think about whether there's one word, two word, accent, not accent. So I don't even bother with it. So in a way, it's sometimes difficult for me to explain. I get a bit confused as I'm explaining it. But, for those of you who need to write exams, recognize the fact that every time you look it up on Google while you're writing, every time you pay attention to it, you're gradually ingraining these habits. And that's the only way you're going to get it right, more often than not over time, although you'll occasionally get it wrong. So I hope that's useful. Let me know what you think, and if this kind of thing is useful, I can have more videos on specific aspects of different languages that seem to cause people difficulty. So there you have it. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.